UK politicians are said to be questioned on why a security firm linked to allegations of human rights abuses could have been hired to provide safety during the London Olympics. G4S also operates in the Jewish settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which are illegal according to international law. Well, let's now talk to investigative journalist Tony Gosling. He's joining me live now in Bristol. Why has a firm with such a questionable reputation been chosen to provide security during the London Games, Tony?
Well, that's a great question, Bill, because even the British Foreign Secretary, William Hague, is saying that the Israeli settlements are illegal under international law and the biggest obstacle to the peace process. So what is this firm that is actually supplying all sorts of equipment to the Israeli army, including helping out at their checkpoints, which is effectively, pro-apartheid, pro-racism, being involved in the Olympics for? It is absolutely outrageous, and I think that it would be really good to see at least some moral conscience in the coming week by the British Parliament by saying, no, we're going to terminate this G4S contract. The trouble is, of course, this is a massive, very powerful company, when you're privatising security, this is basically the privatisation of the British police force is being sucked in by G4S. That what they're doing is they're starting to operate police stations. They're also starting to do a lot of the backdoor work at the police, the civilian support work for the police, and they're even now trying to get contracts. They're bidding for contracts in Birmingham and elsewhere to actually operate the detention facilities inside the existing police stations. So, this is a very bad and very dangerous idea to start with. But this particular company seems to be about the worst you could pick anywhere in the world to do this job.
Well, talking about its history, the firm lost its contract to deport failed asylum seekers in the UK last September following the death of an Angolan asylum seeker who died after being restrained by its employees. Are you surprised that actually it's still allowed to operate?
Well, that's I'm not saying trivialising the fact of that one death, but there's also been 750 plus complaints of abuse by G4S employees. This is a real serious problem. The other thing that G4S are doing is they're now operating private prisons too. So we have a very dangerous organisation. The reason I say that is because what's happened is we've created, by privatising our prisons to people like G4S, an incentive, a financial incentive to incarcerate people. What we don't want to see here in Britain is what we've had over in the United States, where basically being homeless, being poor, and having to sort of turn to alternative methods of maybe to the black market to try and make a living, means that thousands, if not millions and millions of people now in the US, and probably here in the UK soon too, are going to be incarcerated for private profit. Tony, and this creates an incentive to make poor people, criminalise them,
OK, Tony, just briefly, you mentioned that grilling in Westminster this is going to have in the next week or so. Do you think the British Parliament could intervene and they could terminate this contract, just briefly?
Well, it's a difficult thing to do to the Olympics at this final stage, or sort of towards when the Olympics actually happen. Yes, that's a very difficult thing for them to do. But I'd like to see a bit of spine from our Parliament to say that these are not appropriate people to be doing that. In fact, there's quite a lot of people involved in the Olympics, as you probably know, who aren't really appropriate, such as the Dow Chemical Company, who, when they bought Union Carbide, really took on the responsibility for the deaths of 4,000 people in a gas cloud in India, and the maiming of countless more who were poisoned by the Dow Chemical Company. I think there's been a real, a complete kind of mismatch in this Olympics with trying to bring in, really, essentially prostitute the Olympics and give a lot of these poisonous, very profitable and actually very dark, nasty companies to actually greenwash for them. That is to say, to sanitise their images by associating them with the Olympic event. And that is not what the Olympics are for. It's starting to look rather more like the Berlin 1936 Olympics than the good old London 1948 Olympics, which were done in a much nicer fashion without all this horrible corporate sponsorship.
Tony Gosling, live there in Bristol in the UK. Thanks very much for your perspective.